They mocked the quiet new nurse, until a Navy helicopter landed demanding their SEAL Combat Pro. And what if I told you the most dangerous person in that hospital wasn't the one who screamed orders the loudest, but the one who said almost nothing at all? It's 2:07 a.m. at HarborPoint Regional in Norfolk, Virginia. The lights hum like a headache. The waiting room is a pressure cooker. A cocky resident struts the hallway, certain his title makes him untouchable, while the new nurse absorbs every insult with her eyes on the floor and her hands tucked close as if she's hiding a tremor. Everyone reads it as fear. They're wrong. Some tremors aren't weakness, they're restraint, because those hands didn't learn steadiness from calm shifts and clean charts. They learned it when the air shook with rotors, when blood was warm, when a single mistake meant someone never made it home. Watch to the end. This isn't just a story about justice. It's about the moment quiet people stop shrinking. Like the video comment where you're watching from and tell me this in a real emergency. Do you trust the loudest voice or the steadiest hands? The loudest voice in a hospital can fill a hallway, but it cannot always fill the gap between a mistake and a heartbeat. At HarborPoint Regional, people learned that truth in pieces long before anyone dared to say it out loud. 3 months earlier, Emma Carter arrived in Norfolk with a single duffel bag and the kind of careful stillness that drew attention precisely because she was trying not to. The air outside the hospital tasted like salt and rain. Shipyard lights glowed low on the horizon, smeared by drizzle, and somewhere out beyond the river a jet climbed into the dark, with a sound that made her shoulders tense for a fraction of a second before she forced them down again. Inside, HarborPoint ran on routines that looked orderly on paper and felt like controlled chaos in practice. The lobby floors shined too hard under bright lights. The security desk smelled faintly of microwave popcorn. A volunteer in a red vest offered directions with a smile that never reached her eyes. Emma found human resources by following the signs and the sound of a printer chewing through forms. Gary Whitaker, the hospital administrator, had the posture of a man who lived in meetings. He wore a pressed shirt that looked too clean for the rest of the building and carried a clipboard like it was armor. When he shook Emma's hand, his grip was brief and professional, but his gaze flicked once to her wrists, then to the faint white scars across the backs of her fingers. "Emma Carter," he said, checking the name on her paperwork. "Yes, sir." "You are transferring from a VA facility in Ohio." "Yes, sir." He turned a page in her file and paused. A thick block of black ink covered half the sheet. His eyes narrowed. It was the expression of someone who had learned not to ask questions he did not want answered. "We're glad you're here," Whitaker said, sliding the file closed as if that ended the conversation. "Night shift needs steady hands." Emma nodded once. "I can do nights." Whitaker hesitated, then added, "We run a tight ship. Chain of command matters. You follow your physician. You document everything. You keep your head clear." "Yes, sir," Emma said again, as if it were the safest sentence she owned. The nurse educator, a brisk woman named Denise Harper, pinned a badge to Emma's scrub top and walked her through policies at a pace that assumed everyone could keep up or get out of the way. Emma did not interrupt. She listened without blinking, absorbing every word the way some people absorbed threat assessments. Denise pointed down a hallway. "Emergency is down there. You'll meet charge nurse Tara Lopez. She runs the floor." "I understand." "You will when you see her," Denise said, and for the first time her tone warmed slightly. "Keep your pen light on you. Keep your stethoscope where you can reach it. And if you ever feel overwhelmed, you find me, or you call the house supervisor. You do not just freeze." Emma's face stayed neutral, but her jaw tightened at the last word. "I won't," she said. Emergency at HarborPoint was built like a maze, designed by someone who hated quiet. Monitors chirped, doors thumped. The waiting room was always one crisis away from becoming a riot. The triage desk sat under a wall clock that never seemed to move fast enough. Ambulance doors opened and closed with mechanical indifference, taking in blood fear and bad luck and pushing out paperwork. Tara Lopez stood at the nurse station like she owned the air around it. Late 30s hair pulled tight, eyes sharp, with the kind of confidence that came from surviving too many nights with too little staff. She looked Emma up and down, taking inventory. "You're my new hire," Tara said. "Yes, ma'am." Tara's mouth twitched. "Don't call me ma'am. This is not boot camp." Emma lowered her gaze. "Yes." Tara leaned on the counter. "You're quiet?" Emma did not answer fast enough to satisfy Tara, so Tara kept going. "Quiet is fine," she said, but the tone made it sound like a warning. "As long as it doesn't mean slow. We don't do slow here. If you can't keep up, you'll drown. If you drown, you take someone with you." "I can keep up," Emma said softly. Tara watched her for another beat, then tossed her a stack of charts. "Start with these, then restock Bay 4. Someone used the last of the sterile kits and didn't replace them. And after that, find out why the medroom looks like a tornado hit it." Emma caught the charts without fumbling. She turned to go, moving with a cautious precision that looked to an untrained eye like insecurity. To Tara, it looked like hesitation. A resident walked past, white coat flaring behind him like a cape. Dr. Mason Klein carried himself the way some men carried weapons. He had a clean haircut, a bright smile that he deployed like a tool, and eyes that always looked slightly amused, as if the entire hospital existed for his practice. He glanced at Emma's badge, new nurse. Emma stopped. "Yes, doctor." Klein's gaze lingered on her hands. She tucked them closer to her body before she realized she was doing it. He smiled wider. "Try not to faint. The ER is messy." "I won't," Emma said. Tara watched Klein move on, then looked back at Emma. "That one thinks volume equals leadership," she said. "Don't get in his way." Emma nodded and walked toward Bay 4. The first week passed like a test she did not know she was taking. She learned where everything lived, which door stuck, which monitor lied, and which supply closet always went empty first because people stole from it when things got bad. She learned the patterns of the staff, the way some nurses avoided trauma bays because they hated the noise, the way a few residents cut corners when the department got crowded, the way Tara's patients ran out around 3 in the morning. Emma did not complain. She took the worst assignments without comment. She cleaned what others avoided. She carried linen bags that felt heavier than they should. When someone snapped at her, she absorbed it and kept moving. Sometimes she would stop in the hallway for half a second, eyes fixed on nothing as if listening to a frequency no one else could hear. Then she would blink, lift her chin the barest amount, and continue. The staff noticed her in the way people notice an odd noise in a house. They grew used to her presence without understanding it. They also grew used to making her the punchline. Ghost Nurse Tara called her one night after Emma flinched when a metal tray clattered to the floor behind her. Emma's reaction was brief. A freeze, a tight breath, pupils widening. Then control snapped back into place and her face returned to blank. Tara smirked. "You okay, Carter?" "Yes," Emma said too quickly. Klein overheard and chuckled. "If she jumps any higher, we can use her to test ceiling tiles." A few nurses laughed. It was not cruel laughter in their minds. It was survival laughter, the kind that made long shifts bearable, the kind that forgot the person being laughed at was a person. Emma kept her eyes on the cart she was pushing. She let the laughter wash over her like rain. Later in the medroom, she closed the door and stood with her back against the tile. Her breathing came shallow, like her chest had forgotten how to fully expand. She looked down at her wrist and snapped the rubber band once. The sting pulled her back into the room. She counted silently. 4 things she could see. 3 things she could touch. 2 things she could hear. 1 thing she could smell. Sanitizer, latex, old coffee. Her pulse slowed. When she walked out again, her face was composed. No one saw the moment she had almost cracked. At the end of her second week, she found herself in a trauma bay with a patient who had taken a fall from scaffolding. The man was conscious, moaning, reaching for his abdomen. The resident on duty, not Klein, was rattled. His hands shook as he tried to start orders while the patient's blood pressure slid downward like sand through fingers. Emma moved without rushing. She hung fluid. She adjusted the monitor leads. She put oxygen on the patient with hands that trembled at first, then steadied as soon as she had a task. She did not speak unless spoken to, but when she did, her words were exact. "His skin is cold," she said. "Cap refill is delayed." The resident nodded without really seeing her. "Okay, yeah, okay." Emma glanced at the monitor and at the patient's mouth, the way his lips were losing color. She found the pulse, felt how thready it was, then looked at the resident again. "We should call for blood," she said. The resident hesitated. "We don't have labs yet." Emma's eyes flicked to the man's abdomen, then to the floor, where a small, widening pool of blood was forming beneath him. "We will," she said softly. "But he needs blood now." The resident stared at her for a second as if he had just heard a language he did not expect inside a civilian hospital. Then he shook himself and shouted for the blood bank. Later, when the patient was stabilized and the resident had left, Tara cornered Emma near the sink. "That was a good catch," Tara said grudgingly. Emma washed her hands until her skin turned pink. It was obvious. "It wasn't obvious to him," Tara said. "So, what, you're some kind of savant?" Emma kept her eyes on the water. "No." Tara watched her. "Where'd you learn that?" Emma shut off the faucet. Her hands were wet. Her voice stayed even. "I worked in a busy place," she said. Tara snorted. "Busy? That's cute." Emma dried her hands carefully as if care could scrub away memory. The rumors started quietly and spread the way they always did, carried by break-room conversations and hallway whispers. "She came from a VA," someone said. "I heard her file is redacted," someone else answered. Why would a nurse file be redacted? Maybe she was in trouble. Maybe she's a liability. Someone claimed they saw scars on Emma's thigh when her scrub pants rode up while she bent to pick up a dropped syringe cap. Someone else claimed they saw her flinch at the sound of a helicopter passing overhead, head turning instinctively towards the sky. "Told you," Tara said one night to a nurse named Bethany as Emma passed with a cart. "She's always listening for something." Bethany, younger and kinder, watched Emma's back. "Maybe she's just anxious." Tara scoffed. "Anxiety doesn't make you move like that." "What do you mean?" Tara lowered her voice, like she's trying not to be seen. Bethany frowned. "People don't try not to be seen." Tara's smile was thin. "They do when they've got something to hide." Emma heard every word. She did not look back. Klein took a special interest in Emma's silence, like it offended him on principle. He liked nurses who laughed at his jokes, nurses who moved fast and smiled and never questioned him. Emma did none of those things. One night, he stood at the nurse station with his hands in his pockets and watched her chart. "You don't talk much," he said. Emma kept typing. "I'm charting." "That's not what I meant," Klein said. "You don't socialize. You don't banter. You don't make eye contact." Emma paused. She looked up just enough to see his chin. "I'm here to work." Klein leaned closer. "You know what I think?" Emma did not answer. "I think you're scared," he said, the way some men said prayers. "Maybe medicine is too much for you. Maybe you're in the wrong place." Emma's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She forced her shoulders down. She forced her voice to stay soft. "No doctor." Klein smiled. "Then prove it. Next time I tell you to do something, you do it fast. You hesitate, I write you up." He walked away before she could respond. Tara watched him go, then looked at Emma. "Don't let him get under your skin," she said, but her tone carried the faint amusement of someone watching a slow-motion collision. Emma continued charting. Her fingers trembled slightly on the keys, then steadied again. Later that shift, a patient with chest pain came in. Middle-aged, sweaty, breathing fast. The waiting room had overflowed and the hallway beds were already full. Tara was triaging snapping orders, managing the flow like a traffic controller in a storm. Klein took the patient and made his calls quickly. He ordered labs and imaging and medication with the confidence of someone who had never watched confidence fail. Emma started an IV. Her hands shook a fraction as the needle hovered, then slid in smoothly. The vein filled the catheter with blood like a signal flare. She taped it down with practiced efficiency. Klein glanced at her work. "At least you can do that," he said. Emma said nothing. When Klein ordered a medication, Emma checked the chart. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she scanned the allergy list. "Doctor," she said quietly. Klein did not look up. "This patient has an allergy listed," Emma said, "to that class." Klein waved a hand. "It's probably inaccurate. Half these charts are wrong." Emma's mouth tightened. She could feel the weight of her badge, the weight of her job, the weight of being new and unknown. She swallowed. "It's documented," she said. Klein finally looked at her, irritated. "Are you questioning my order?" Emma's pulse picked up. She forced her voice flat. "I'm confirming safety." Klein stepped closer, lowering his voice so others could not easily hear, but loud enough for the threat to land. "You will not embarrass me," he said. "You will administer the medication." Emma held his gaze for the first time, not at his eyes, but at the bridge of his nose, a trick she had learned to simulate eye contact without triggering the old reflex to look away. "Doctor," she said again, and this time there was no apology in the word. Tara noticed the tension and walked over. "What's going on?" Klein's smile snapped into place. "Nothing. Nurse Carter is being cautious." Tara glanced at the chart in Emma's hands. "Is it a legit allergy?" Emma nodded once. Tara looked at Klein, then picked something else. Klein's jaw tightened. He turned away sharply, muttering under his breath. When he was gone, Tara leaned close to Emma. "You got lucky," she whispered, "that I was standing here." Emma stared at the chart. It wasn't luck. Tara's eyes narrowed. "Watch yourself. He doesn't like being corrected." Emma nodded and returned to her work. Inside her chest, something twisted. Not fear of Klein. Fear of what happened when she spoke up. Fear of how easily her voice had found steel. That night after shift change, Emma walked out into the humid dark and crossed the parking lot with her bag slung over one shoulder. Norfolk smelled like wet pavement and diesel. The distant river carried a low industrial hum. A siren wailed somewhere far away and faded. A helicopter passed overhead high and fast, just a blur of sound in the clouds. Emma stopped walking, her head tilted, tracking it automatically. The sound hit something deep in her bones. For a moment, she was not in a parking lot. She was somewhere else, somewhere with dust in her teeth and heat rising off metal. She could feel vibration through her boots. She could taste copper. Her fingers dug into the strap of her bag until her knuckles went pale. Then she blinked and the parking lot returned. She kept walking, but faster now. Her apartment was small and clean and almost empty. No photos on the walls, no bright colors, no clutter. The kind of space that looked temporary even after the rent check cleared. She locked the door twice, then set her bag down and sat at the small kitchen table without turning on the overhead light. The only glow came from the microwave clock. She took out a pill bottle and rolled it between her palms. She did not open it. Instead, she opened the inner pocket of her duffel and pulled out the dog tags she had hidden. The metal was worn smooth at the edges. They were heavy in her hand, heavier than they should have been. She read the name she tried not to read. Then she closed her fist around them and pressed them to her forehead as if pressure could keep thoughts from spilling out. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her chest tightened. She let it ring until it stopped. The next morning, she went to a small clinic near the edge of town, the kind of place tucked between a grocery store and a laundromat. She sat in a waiting room with beige walls and a fish tank that needed cleaning. A television played a talk show with the volume too low to follow. When her name was called, she stood and walked into an office that smelled faintly of peppermint tea. Dr. Allison Mercer. Her therapist watched her settle into the chair. "How was your week?" Mercer asked. Emma's eyes fixed on a spot on the carpet. "Fine." Mercer did not push immediately. She had learned Emma's rhythms. "Any sleep?" Mercer asked. "A few hours," Emma said. "Any dreams?" Emma's jaw tightened. "A couple." "Any triggers at work?" Emma's hands moved unconsciously toward her wrist. The rubber band was there. She snapped it once lightly. A tray dropped, she said. I froze. Mercer nodded. What did you do after? I counted, Emma said. And it worked, Emma said, mostly. Mercer leaned forward slightly. You are doing the hard thing, Emma. You are building a new life in a place that feels ordinary. Emma swallowed. Ordinary is safer. Mercer held her gaze patient. Safe can still hurt. Emma did not answer. That was the pattern. Work, silence, control. Therapy, small truths, more silence. And always beneath it a tension that never fully released, like a muscle held clenched for too long. At HarborPoint, the staff continued to treat Emma like a mistake that had slipped past hiring. Tara assigned her to hallway beds, to unpleasant cleanups, to tasks that kept her moving but never centered. Klein found reasons to criticize her, charting her timing, her tone. One night he cornered her at the nurse station. Room 9, he said, pain control. I ordered it 30 minutes ago. Emma checked the chart. His blood pressure dropped, she said. I rechecked it. Klein slammed his hand on the counter. The sharp sound made 2 nurses jump. Emma did not jump, but her pupils widened for an instant. You do not delay my orders, Klein said. Emma's voice stayed soft. I was confirming safety. You are a nurse, Klein snapped. You are not the decision-maker. Emma looked down, swallowing the impulse to argue. Yes, doctor, she said. Klein leaned in, satisfied. Try not to make a habit of thinking. He walked away. Tara watched him go and shook her head as if Emma were the problem. He's a jerk, she said, but he's still a doctor. You want to survive here, you keep him happy. Emma filed the words away like an unpleasant diagnosis. She survived by becoming small. She made her body take up less space. She kept her voice low. She moved carefully, as if careful movement could keep attention away. She worked harder than anyone expected, but never demanded recognition for it. And the more invisible she tried to become, the more she became a target. Carter Bethany said one night while they stocked supplies, voice hushed. Can I ask you something? Emma did not look up. Sure. Why do you always keep your sleeves down? Bethany asked. Emma's fingers paused on a box of gauze. It's cold. Bethany frowned. It's 90 degrees in here. Emma slid the box into place. I like it cold. Bethany hesitated, then added, people talk, you know. Emma's stomach tightened. About what? Bethany shrugged, trying to look casual. About your file. About the way you move. About the scars. Emma's hands went still. Bethany softened. I don't care. If you need someone to cover a break, or if you need to step out, I can. Emma looked at Bethany, then really looked, meeting her eyes for a fraction of a second. Thank you, Emma said quietly. Bethany smiled a little. You're welcome. That was how allies formed at HarborPoint. Not with speeches, with small acts that cost something. The hospital itself carried its own tension. Norfolk was a Navy town, and service members passed through the ER more than in most cities. There were sprained ankles from training runs, broken knuckles from bar fights, and the occasional haunted stare that Emma recognized too well. She treated them with a gentleness that felt automatic. Once an older man came in with a concussion. His wallet spilled open during triage and an old military ID slid across the bed. Emma picked it up and slid it back without comment. The man watched her hands. You served, he asked, voice rough. Emma's chest tightened. No, she said immediately. The lie tasted sour. The man held her gaze for a second longer than polite, then nodded as if he understood what she really meant and let it go. After that, Emma kept her distance from anyone who looked like they might recognize the shape of her silence. Whitaker, the administrator, rarely walked the ER unless there was a complaint or a donor tour. But he visited more often after Emma arrived, and he always looked at her with a flicker of discomfort, like she reminded him of an email he had deleted without reading. One afternoon, he stood at the edge of the nurse station while Tara rattled off staffing problems. We're short again, Tara said. We need another experienced night nurse. Whitaker's gaze shifted to Emma, who was stalking a cart without looking up. You have Carter, he said. Tara snorted. She's quiet. Whitaker's mouth tightened. Quiet does not mean incompetent. Tara blinked, surprised by his tone. Whitaker cleared his throat and softened. "She was highly recommended," he said. "We will not lose her." Tara narrowed her eyes. "Recommended by who?" Whitaker did not answer. He turned and walked away. After he left, Tara stared at Emma like she was a puzzle that kept changing shape. Emma kept stalking the cart. Days bled into weeks. Weeks into months. HarborPoint became predictable in its unpredictability. Emma learned which sirens meant serious trauma and which meant someone with chest pain who would walk out angry after waiting too long. She learned which doctors listened and which performed listening without hearing. Klein remained the loudest, and Emma remained the quietest. One Tuesday afternoon, the department ran hot. A wave of patients had filled every bay. The hallway beds were packed. Triage was backed up to the front doors. Tara's voice cut through the noise like a blade, snapping orders, keeping the machine moving. Emma stood at the nurse station updating charts, hands steady now because she had something concrete to hold on to. A faint tremor returned when she had to stop and wait with nothing to do, so she kept moving. She kept working. Klein strode in from the ambulance bay, sweat on his forehead, irritation on his face. "Why is radiology taking so long?" he barked. Tara did not look up. "Because they have 3 traumas and 1 tech." Klein slammed his palm on the counter. "Then we do without. Start moving these patients out." A paramedic's voice crackled over the radio near triage, distorted by static. "Triage. This is Medic 12. We have multiple inbound. Multi-vehicle collision. I-64 westbound near the bridge. Estimated arrival 6 minutes. Tara's head snapped up. Her eyes met Emma's for a brief moment, and something unspoken passed between them. Tara reached for the phone. "Clear bays," she said sharply. Emma set her chart down, already moving. The paramedic's voice had barely faded from the radio when the department shifted its weight like an animal bracing for impact. Tara's hand stayed on the receiver for a beat, eyes fixed on nothing, counting the minutes in her head. Then she snapped back into motion. "Clear bays 1 through 4. She said loud enough for every nurse to hear. "Hallway beds get pushed tight to the wall. If anyone is sitting on a stretcher and breathing on their own, they move. Now." The waiting room was already crowded with the usual collection of pain and impatience, but the announcement changed the air. People looked up. A man, holding his wrist, stopped arguing with the receptionist. An older woman with a swollen ankle tightened her grip on her purse like it was a flotation device. They could feel it before they understood it, the way humans can sense when something bigger than their personal suffering is about to enter the room. Emma set her chart down, already moving. The tremor in her fingers vanished the second she had direction. She grabbed a linen bag, stripped Bay 2 with efficient hands, swapped out the sheets, wiped down rails, checked the oxygen, checked the suction. Her mind slid into a narrow corridor where only tasks existed. Klein stalked through the center aisle, barking at a nurse to bring him a suture kit and another to find respiratory. His voice cut over the rising noise like he was trying to own the chaos by naming it. "Radiology. I need portable imaging ready," he shouted toward the phone at the station. "Respiratory, you're in my pocket on this." Tara shot him a look. "Stay out of the way unless I put you in a bay," she said. Klein scoffed like he had heard a joke. "You clear bays, I run medicine." Tara did not answer. She did not have time to entertain delusions. She turned to Emma as Emma rolled a fresh cart into Bay 3. "Carter," Tara said. "You're with Klein in 3. He'll take whatever rolls in. You keep him from doing something stupid." Emma paused for half a second. The words landed heavy. Tara's eyes held hers sharp, not unkind, but firm. "Yes," Emma said. Tara's mouth tightened, almost a smile. "And if he starts throwing his title around, you duck." Emma nodded and stepped into the bay. The ambulance bay doors blew open a moment later, and the sound came with them. Sirens cutting off mid-howl boots on wet concrete, the slam of stretcher wheels over thresholds. The smell followed too, that copper and rubber and road grit smell that clung to crash scenes like a second skin. "Incoming," a paramedic shouted. First wave. 2 stretchers came in back to back, then a third, then more behind them. Nurses peeled off like a practiced swarm, hands reaching, voices calling out vitals and names and injuries. Male 56 chest pain restrained, driver airbags deployed. Female 29 open, fib stable pain, 10 of 10. Teen male altered, possible head trauma. Unrestrained, GCS 12. The trauma board at the station filled with names and dry erase marker, each one a thin line between order and overflow. Emma stood in Bay 3 with gloves on eyes, scanning, listening, orienting. The overhead lights in her bay were too bright, the kind that made everyone's skin look pale. The curtain was half pulled back, ready to be yanked into place if someone needed privacy, if privacy mattered in the next 10 minutes. Klein entered with the swagger of someone who thought adrenaline was a badge. "Give me the stable ones," he said. "Tara can take the criticals." "You get what rolls in," Emma said before she could stop herself. The words were quiet, but they landed. Klein's eyes flicked to her. "Excuse me." Emma felt the edge of her own voice and pulled back. "We don't choose," she said softer. Klein's grin returned thin. "Right. You don't choose. You follow." The first patient rolled into Bay 3 on a stretcher that left a wet track across the floor. The paramedic at the head of the bed had blood on his forearms and exhaustion in his face. "Name's Dan Miller," he said, voice fast controlled. 45. Construction foreman, restrained driver. Vehicle got clipped, spun, hit the barrier. He was pinned a couple minutes. He's awake, oriented, complaining of left chest pain and trouble breathing. No obvious external bleeding. Vitals on arrival, heart rate 110, pressure 120, over 80, sats 92 on room air. We put him on 4 liters, he came up to 95. Dan's face was slick with sweat. His eyes tracked movement in the room with the wide focus of a man trying to stay calm. He pressed one hand to his left side like he could hold himself together by force. "It feels like something's sitting on my chest," Dan said, breathy. Klein stepped in and did a quick sweep with his eyes, pen light in hand, as if checking pupils would give him the whole story. "You're talking," he said, dismissive. "That's good. A seatbelt bruise, maybe a rib. You'll live." Dan tried to smile and failed. "Hurts to breathe." "That's ribs," Klein said. He glanced at Emma. "Get him a portable chest film when radiology frees up. Give him Tylenol. We need the bay." Emma moved to the bedside, hands on the rail, ready to unlock the wheels. The stretcher was set to roll out toward the hallway, toward a line of patients waiting under fluorescent light like luggage. She paused, not because she was slow, because something in the man's body language did not match the words around him. Dan's breathing was shallow, but it was not just pain shallow. His chest lifted unevenly, the left side lagging. The muscles in his neck were working too hard. His mouth opened like he was trying to pull air through a straw. Emma's eyes went to his throat and stayed there. A vein at the side of his neck stood out, pulsing fuller than it should have been. With each breath, the skin tugged tight. She looked at his collarbones and the line of his trachea. It was subtle, a shift you could miss if you were looking for obvious injuries, if you were looking for dramatic blood. But her attention lived in subtleties. That was where danger hid. Dan spoke again. "I can't get a deep breath." Emma felt the hair rise along her arms. She did not unlock the wheels. "Stop," she said. Klein turned, annoyance already loaded in his face. "What?" Emma kept her voice level. "Do not move him." Klein stared at her like she had spoken out of turn at a formal dinner. Nurse Carter moved the bed. Emma did not move. She leaned closer to Dan, watching the rise and fall, listening without a stethoscope the way you listened for wind shifting in a field. Klein Tara's voice called from outside the bay, busy with another stretcher. "What do you need?" Klein answered without taking his eyes off Emma. "I need my nurse to do her job." Emma looked at Klein, then not at his shoes, not at his badge, but at his face. The tremor that haunted her hands was gone. Her eyes were steady. "He's not stable," she said. Klein stepped closer, lowering his voice, trying to make the moment private and humiliating. "You are not the one who decides stable," he said. "You are not the one who diagnoses." Emma's mouth stayed relaxed. Her tone changed quiet but edged like a command spoken through grit. "Look at his neck," she said. Klein flicked his eyes to Dan's throat and back unimpressed. "People get anxious." "It is not anxiety," Emma said. "His jugular is distended. His chest rise is asymmetric. He is air-hungry." Klein scoffed. "He's got pain. That's why he's guarding." Emma shook her head once. "Not dramatic, just absolute." "There's a shift," she said, "starting. And his breath sounds on the left are not right." Klein's nostrils flared. "You listened without a scope." "I watched," Emma said. "It is enough." Klein leaned in until his shadow cut across her hands. "Move him, now." Dan's fingers tightened on the sheet. "Doc?" He wheezed. "It really hurts." Klein ignored him. His pride was louder than the patient. Emma's gaze went back to Dan, to the sheen of sweat, to the subtle blue, trying to creep into his lips. "Do not move him," she said again, and this time the words were not for Klein. They were for everyone within earshot. Her voice carried out of the bay, clean controlled. A nurse in the adjacent bay glanced over. Bethany froze mid-motion with an IV kit. Tara turned her head sharply. Klein's face reddened. "Carter," he hissed, "you are a nurse." The monitor behind Dan let out a sudden urgent chirp, as if it had been waiting for someone to pay attention. Dan's eyes widened. His hand slipped from his side. His chest stuttered. The numbers on the screen changed too fast. A shrill alarm took over. "He's dropping," Bethany shouted from the doorway. Dan tried to inhale and failed. His mouth opened silent for a second, then a thin, panicked sound came out. Klein's confidence cracked like glass under pressure. He looked at the monitor, then at Dan, then around the room as if searching for an adult. "Crash cart," he barked. "Respiratory, get in here. We need to intubate. Call anesthesia." Tara appeared at the doorway, eyes sharp, taking in the scene in half a second. "What happened?" Klein snapped, frantic. "He's coding. Get out of my way." Emma moved before Tara could answer. She did not run. She did not flail. Her motion was smooth, precise, like she had stepped into a role her body remembered. Dan's skin had turned a shade that made the room feel colder. His blood pressure on the monitor sank, numbers collapsing. Emma placed a hand on Dan's shoulder firm enough to anchor him. "Listen to me," she said to him, her voice low. "Stay still." Dan's eyes flickered toward her, desperate. "I can't breathe." "I know," Emma said. "Hold on." Klein reached for Dan's jaw, fumbling to position his head, but his hands were clumsy with panic. "We need airway," he said. Voice too loud, like volume could replace skill. Emma turned her head slightly toward Klein, not taking her hand off Dan. "Move," she said. Klein blinked. "What did you say?" Emma's eyes stayed on Dan's chest. "Step back," she said. "Give me space." Klein bristled. "You do not order me." Emma's free hand came up and caught Klein's wrist as he reached toward her. Her grip was not aggressive. It was decisive. The kind of grip that said the discussion was over. Klein's eyes widened, surprised at the strength in her hand. "Back," Emma said again. Tara took a half step into the bay mouth, slightly open, watching a nurse she had labeled quiet shift into something else. Bethany stood frozen with the syringe, forgetting what it was for. Klein yanked his wrist back, offended. "You assaulted me." Emma did not look at him. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small plastic catheter, the kind nurses carried for difficult access. Her focus narrowed to a point on Dan's chest, a spot she found by feel, by anatomy, by memory that lived under her skin. Dan's eyes rolled slightly as his brain starved for oxygen. The alarm on the monitor became a steady scream. Emma Tara said, voice tight. She did not call her Carter. "What are you doing?" Emma's tone stayed even, releasing pressure. Klein barked a laugh that sounded wrong in the moment. "That is not your call." Emma did not answer. She pressed her palm briefly against Dan's chest, a quick assessment through fabric and muscle. Her other hand positioned the catheter with a steadiness that did not belong to the nurse they had mocked for shaking while holding a chart. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then there was a sound, sharp and unmistakable, air escaping with a hiss that cut through the chaos. Pressure found a way out. Dan's body reacted instantly. His chest expanded more fully. His eyes blinked, startled by the sudden return of air. His mouth opened, and he pulled in a harsh, grateful breath that sounded like someone surfacing from underwater. The monitor's scream softened into a series of normal beeps. Numbers climbed. Heart rate steadied. Blood pressure crawled back from the edge. Tara exhaled like she had been holding her breath for too long. Bethany's hand flew to her mouth. Klein stood rigid, staring at the catheter taped in place, then at Dan, who was now breathing, then at Emma, who was already checking Dan's pulse-adjusting oxygen with efficient hands. Dan's voice came back in a rasp. "Oh my God," he said, "I can breathe." Emma nodded once. "Good," she said, and the word carried no triumph, just confirmation. Tara stepped in, eyes scanning. "Portable chest now," she ordered. "Call surgery. Call respiratory anyway. Keep him here." Bethany scrambled for the phone, moving again. Klein's face shifted from panic to humiliation so quickly it looked almost unreal. He flexed his wrist as if it hurt more insulted than injured. "What did you do?" he demanded, voice shaking with anger now that the fear had been replaced by ego. Emma's shoulders began to fold back inward. The switch that had thrown her into command released slightly. She dropped her eyes to the floor, not out of shame exactly, but out of habit. "Emergency intervention," she said quietly. He was crashing. Klein's jaw worked. "You performed an invasive procedure without authorization." Emma did not deny it. She did not argue. She kept her attention on Dan. Klein's voice rose. "You do not get to decide. You are not the physician." Tara looked at Klein, then at Dan, who was alive, who was breathing. "She saved him," Bethany said, voice small but certain. Klein whipped his head toward her. "Stay out of this." Tara's eyes narrowed. Klein focused on the patient. Klein ignored her. His attention was locked on Emma like she had broken the rules of gravity. "You touched me," he said, pointing at his wrist. "You assaulted a doctor." Emma finally looked up, meeting his gaze with a calm that made his anger look childish. "I stopped you from interfering," she said. "He was dying." Klein's face flushed deeper. "You do not say that to me." Dan coughed, then winced, breathing through it. "Doc," he rasped. Eyes half closed. "I thought I was gonna die." Klein did not look at Dan. He looked at Emma. "You are done," he said, voice tight with rage. "Get out of my ER." Tara stepped forward. "Klein, we can talk after we stabilize him." Klein's eyes snapped to Tara. "I am filing a report. She will not work here after tonight." Tara's mouth opened, then closed. The calculus of politics and staffing flashed across her face. Emma watched Tara's expression and understood without anyone saying it. The bay had been a battlefield for a minute, and she had won the fight, but the war inside these walls was different. She turned back to Dan and adjusted the oxygen cannula. "You're going to feel better now," she said to him. "Stay still." Dan looked at her like he was trying to memorize her face. "Thank you," he whispered. Emma nodded once and stepped away from the bed. Klein pointed toward the doorway as if expelling a contaminant. "Now," he said. Emma pulled her gloves off slowly and dropped them in the bin. Her hands began to tremble again as soon as the immediate danger passed, as if her body had stored the shaking while it needed steadiness. She kept her fingers curled so no one would see. "Yes, doctor," she said, voice soft again. She walked out of Bay 3 into the hallway where the mass casualty continued like a storm that did not care about individual drama. Stretchers kept arriving. Tara shouted orders. A child cried, a man groaned. A paramedic demanded a bed for a patient with a head wound. Emma moved through it all like a shadow, slipping along the wall. Bethany followed her for a few steps, eyes wide. "Emma," she whispered. Emma did not stop. "It's okay," she said, not looking back. Bethany's voice caught. That was not okay. Emma kept walking. In the med room, she closed the door and leaned against the tile. Her breathing came fast, now delayed panic arriving after the adrenaline left. She snapped the rubber band on her wrist harder this time. The sting anchored her. She opened her eyes and stared at the shelves of medication like they were a landscape she could hide in. Her hands shook, but her mind was clear. Tara's knock came a moment later, quick and sharp. She opened the door without waiting for an answer, face tight. "You can't do that," Tara said, but her voice lacked heat. It sounded like fear. Emma's eyes stayed down. He was going to die. Tara's jaw clenched. I saw that she admitted. I also saw Klein's face. "He will burn you for this." Emma's mouth pressed into a line. "I know." Tara studied her as if trying to reconcile two images that refused to merge. "Where did you learn that?" Tara asked, not casually this time. Emma's voice stayed small. "A long time ago." "That is not an answer," Tara said. Emma lifted her eyes for a second, meeting Tara's gaze. There was something older in her stare, something that did not belong in a civilian hospital. "It is the only answer I can give," she said. Tara looked away first. "Collect your things," she said quietly. "Security is going to ask for your badge." Emma nodded. The hallway outside the med room felt louder now, even though nothing had changed. Klein's voice carried from somewhere near the station, sharp and satisfied. Tara's orders continued. The hospital kept breathing. Emma walked toward the locker room, past the nurses who would not meet her eyes, past the staff who stared like she was a story they could not place. Bethany stood near the station, hands clenched at her sides, watching Emma go. Emma did not slow. The locker room door shut behind her, with a soft click that sounded final. She crossed to her locker, sat on the bench, and turned the dial with fingers that would not stop trembling. When the door opened, her duffel bag waited inside exactly where she had left it. A dark mouth ready to swallow whatever was left of her life here. Emma sat on the bench with her locker door open, the fluorescent lights above flickering in a tired rhythm. The room smelled like bleach and damp fabric. Somewhere down the hall, the ER kept roaring, a living machine that did not pause for one nurse's career to end. She pulled her duffel onto her lap and began packing in the same careful order she used for everything. Fold, press, stack. Nothing loose, nothing loud. A pair of spare socks, a phone charger. The small notebook she never wrote in at work. Her badge slid into her palm, warm from her body, and she stared at it until her eyes blurred. HarborPoint Regional Medical Center, it read. Emma Carter, RN. For a second, her throat tightened so hard it felt like she could not swallow. Then her hands moved again. She set the badge face down in the bag like she could hide the name from the world and it would stop being true. The door to the locker room slammed open. Tara Lopez stood there, hair coming loose at the temples, her face flushed from running. She did not step in right away. She looked at Emma the way you looked at a person standing on the edge of something high. "You packed fast," Tara said. Emma did not look up. "It's not my first time." Tara's mouth twitched as if she wanted to argue, then thought better of it. She closed the door behind her and lowered her voice. "Klein's in the charge office," Tara said. "He's on the phone with the house supervisor and the chief. He wants your license." Emma's hands paused on a folded scrub top. "He can try." Tara stared. "That is not how this works." Emma resumed packing. "It's how it worked in my last job." Tara stepped closer. Her tone softened, but the fear stayed. "You saved a man in my bay," she said. "I saw what you did. I also saw you grab Klein's wrist like you were stopping him from stepping on a landmine." Emma said. Tara's eyes narrowed. He was not going to kill the patient. Emma kept her gaze on the bag. He was going to delay until the patient died. "It is the same outcome." Silence settled between them. Tara exhaled slowly. "Security is coming," she said. "Whitaker said to collect your badge and escort you out the employee entrance. He wants it quiet." Emma nodded once. Quiet, of course he did. Tara leaned against the locker row, arms crossed, watching Emma's hands. The tremor had returned. Not big, not obvious, just enough to make the zipper tug instead of slide. "You okay?" Tara asked. Emma's jaw tightened. "I am fine." "That is not what I asked," Tara said. Emma paused again. She pressed her palm flat against her thigh like she was anchoring herself to a solid surface. "No," she said quietly, "but I will be." Tara's gaze held on her, then shifted away, as if looking at Emma too long made her uncomfortable. "Bethany's upset," she said. Emma's fingers curled around the zipper. "Bethany will recover." Tara shook her head. "You say things like that, like you have seen worse than this." Emma did not answer. A heavy knock hit the locker room door hard enough to rattle the hinges. Tara pushed off the lockers and opened it. Paul Winslow stood there, HarborPoint security sweat darkening the collar of his blue shirt. He was a big man, softened by middle age and too many night shifts. His eyes moved past Tara and landed on Emma, then dropped like he could not meet the gaze of someone being escorted out. "Tara," Paul said, voice awkward, "we need her badge." Tara nodded once, then looked back at Emma. "Give it to him." Emma reached into the bag and pulled the badge out. For a second, it caught on her fingers as if reluctant to leave. She handed it to Paul without ceremony. Paul took it carefully. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice, "you did good in there." "I heard." Emma's mouth tightened. "Thank you." Paul shifted his weight uneasy. "Whitaker wants you out through the back. No scene." Emma slung the duffel over her shoulder and felt the weight settle against her spine. It was heavier than her belongings. It was the end of the quiet she had built here. Tara stepped aside and let Emma pass. "Be smart," Tara said softly. Emma nodded. "I always am." She walked into the hallway. The sounds of the ER rolled over her like heat. A nurse shouted for a consult. A monitor alarmed and then stopped. A patient in a hallway bed groaned, voice hoarse, asking for water. The smell of blood and alcohol and sweat clung to everything. Klein's voice cut through it all, carrying from the charge office near the station. "You cannot let this slide," he snapped into the phone. "She performed an invasive procedure. She grabbed me. She undermined physician authority. If we let nurses start playing doctor, someone dies." Emma kept walking. Paul followed a few steps behind her, not close enough to look like an escort, but close enough to be a shadow of authority. Tara remained near the nurse station watching Emma go with a face that looked caught between relief and something like regret. Emma did not look back. The employee exit sat at the end of a corridor that smelled like mop water. A red exit sign glowed above the door. A push bar waited simple and final. Emma reached for it. Then she felt it, a vibration in the floor so faint at first she wondered if it was her pulse. It grew in a slow wave, a low thump that pressed against the building like a giant hand. Paul stopped behind her. His brows pulled together. "You hear that?" he asked. Emma's fingers froze on the push bar. The sound did not belong here. It was not the familiar distant chop of a medevac. Not the clean rhythmic sweep of a news helicopter. This was heavier, deeper, the kind of rotor wash that made windows shiver and loose signs tremble. It was the sound of military weight coming down. Emma's breath caught in her throat. No, not here. Paul turned his head toward the ceiling as if trying to see through concrete. "That's close," he said. "Too close." The vibration deepened. Dust drifted from a ceiling vent and fell like ash. Emma released the push bar and stepped back from the door as if it had turned hot. Paul stared at her. "You know what that is," he said. Emma's voice came out thin. "It's not for me." But she already knew she was lying. The building shook again. A deeper thump, the kind that rattled metal instruments in trays, the kind that made the air itself feel thick. From somewhere down the hall a patient screamed, startled by the sudden rumble. Paul swallowed. "I'm going to check the ambulance bay," he said, trying to sound in control. "You stay here." Emma's eyes stayed fixed on the exit door. She did not answer. Paul jogged away. Emma stood alone in the corridor, duffel strap digging into her shoulder, staring at the door, like it was the last line between her and a life she did not want back. The sound grew louder. It became physical. The lights overhead flickered again, and for a heartbeat the hallway was dim, then bright. Emma's vision sharpened in the way it did when her body decided the world might become dangerous. She turned and walked back toward the ER, not because she wanted to, but because the corridor had become a tunnel where she could not hide. The closer she got to the ambulance bay doors, the more the noise swallowed everything. The automatic doors shuddered as wind hit them from outside. Paperwork at the nurse station lifted and skittered across the counter. A patient in a wheelchair covered his ears and shouted something lost in the roar. Tara grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. "What the hell is that?" she yelled. Klein burst out of the charge office phone, still in hand, his face twisted with annoyance. "That is a violation," he shouted, voice nearly swallowed by the sound. "You can't land an aircraft on hospital property without clearance. Paul, call the FAA. Call the police." Paul appeared near the doors, pale. He looked like a man who had just seen something he was not paid to see. "Dr. Paul," said, voice strained, "that is not a civilian bird." Klein waved him off. "I don't care what it is. It's on private property." Tara stepped closer to the doors. Eyes narrowed against the wind blasting through cracks. She looked toward the parking lot through the glass, and her face drained. Outside in the staff lot, a helicopter settled onto the asphalt as if it owned the ground. Matte black. No visible markings. The rotors kept turning at high idle, throwing grit and rain into a violent swirl. A reserved parking sign snapped and bent under the wash. Klein stared through the glass, stunned for half a second, then anger surged back into his posture like a reflex. He shoved the doors open and stepped into the blast. Tara grabbed his sleeve. "Mason," she shouted, "do not go out there." He yanked free. "This is my hospital," he snapped. Whitaker appeared behind them. The administrator's pressed shirt now wrinkled his face tight with panic. "What is happening?" he demanded. Tara pointed. "That's what's happening." Whitaker's eyes fixed on the aircraft and he went still. His mouth opened as if to speak, then closed again. His fingers tightened around the clipboard in his hand until the knuckles went pale. The side door of the helicopter slid open. 4 men dropped to the ground in a coordinated motion that did not look like a landing. It looked like an insertion. They wore gear that made the hospital staff seem soft by comparison. Plate carriers, helmets, rifles slung tight, muzzles angled low but ready, faces unshaven, eyes scanning. They moved with predatory calm, their boots striking wet asphalt in a rhythm that made Emma's skin tighten. She recognized it. The cadence of men who lived in dangerous places and survived by controlling space. The lead operator was tall and broad, his beard dark with rain. A scar cut through his eyebrow. His gaze tracked the hospital entrance like it was a breach point, not a doorway. Klein stepped forward into the wind, holding up a hand. "You cannot land here," he shouted. "This is a medical facility. You are trespassing." The operator did not slow. He walked through Klein's space like Klein was air. Klein staggered back a step as the man's shoulder checked him, not violent, just indifferent. The operator did not even turn his head. He kept moving toward the doors. Klein's face flushed. "Hey," he yelled, chasing after them. "I am a physician. You are interfering with patient care." The operator's voice came out low and flat, barely raised above the rotor noise. "Move." Whitaker stepped forward, trying to summon authority. "I am the hospital administrator," he shouted. "You cannot bring weapons into the building. Who is in charge here?" The operator stopped just inside the threshold where the wind still clawed at the doors. He looked down at Whitaker with eyes that were bloodshot, exhausted, and sharp. "I am," he said. Whitaker swallowed. "You need to identify yourself." The operator's hand came up and pressed briefly to his headset, as if acknowledging someone on a secure net. Then he looked back at Whitaker. "Commander Cole Rourke," he said, voice still calm. "You will not obstruct us." Whitaker drew himself up. "This is not a war zone." Rourke's gaze held on him. "Then do not make it one," he said. The words cut through the room in a way that made the air feel thinner. Around them, nurses froze. A paramedic paused mid-sentence. Even the monitors seemed quieter, their beeps suddenly small against the weight of armed men inside a civilian hospital. Tara stood behind the counter, her hands gripping the edge so hard her fingers went white. Bethany was near triage, eyes wide, one hand pressed to her mouth. Emma stood near the hallway leading to the locker rooms, partly hidden by a wall. The duffel strap sat heavy on her shoulder. Her heart hammered, but her body stayed still, a disciplined stillness that had kept her alive in other places. Rourke's eyes swept the nurse station. He was not looking at the patients, not at the doctors, not at the chaos. He was looking for a specific shape in the room. "Where is she?" he asked. His voice was not loud, but it carried the way a command carried when everyone in the room understood instinctively that ignoring it could be dangerous. Tara swallowed hard. Who, she asked. Rourke's gaze snapped to her. "The new nurse," he said. Quiet. Scars on her hands. "Where is Wraith?" Tara blinked as if the word did not fit inside her world. "Wraith," she repeated. Klein barged back inside, face red with fury and the wind. He held his phone up like a weapon. "You cannot be in here," he shouted. "I'm calling the police." Rourke did not look at him. Klein pointed at the operators. "You are armed in a hospital." Rourke's head turned slightly. His eyes landed on Klein at last, cold and assessing. "You are in my way," Rourke said. Klein scoffed, trying to salvage dignity. "This is my department." Rourke's stare did not change. "No," he said, "it is not." Tara found her voice again shaky but present. "We have a nurse named Emma Carter," she said. "If that is who you mean." Rourke's eyes narrowed. A flicker of recognition passed across his face, not surprise, something closer to confirmation. "Carter," he repeated. "Where is she?" Klein barked a laugh, high and sharp. "You mean the one I just fired," he said. "She is unstable. She assaulted me. She performed an unauthorized procedure. If you are here for her, you can take her. I will sign whatever statement you need." Bethany's eyes snapped to him, horrified. "Doctor," she whispered. Klein ignored her. Rourke's gaze locked on Klein, and for a beat the room went very still. "You fired her." "Rourke," said voice, quieter than before. Klein puffed out his chest, mistaking quiet for weakness. "Yes," he said, "she is a liability." One of Rourke's men shifted slightly, the movement small, but it made Tara flinch. Another operator's hand adjusted on his rifle sling, not threatening, habitual. Rourke took one step closer to Klein. His presence filled space in a way that did not require shouting. "You have no idea what you just touched," Rourke said. Klein's smile faltered. "What is that supposed to mean?" Whitaker stepped between them, panic returning. "Commander," he said, "this is a hospital. If you have an issue, we can discuss it in my office." Rourke's eyes did not leave Klein. "Find her," he said to his team, voice clipped. The other operators moved, instantly splitting with silent coordination. One turned toward the back hallways. One moved toward the staff corridors. The third watched the room, controlling the space around Rourke like a guard dog. Whitaker raised his hand slightly. "You cannot search our staff areas," he said. Rourke finally looked at him. "Move," he said again, and the word carried the same weight as before. Whitaker hesitated, then stepped aside. His authority folded in the face of something older and harder. Emma backed further into the hallway shadows, the duffel strap tightening as her shoulder muscles braced. The operator's boots on linoleum had a sound she recognized, a heavy cadence that made her stomach twist. She turned and walked quickly toward the locker corridor, keeping to the walls, not running, because running drew attention. Her mind raced through exits, the fire stairs at the end, the service door near laundry, the loading dock. She reached the locker room door and slipped inside. The noise of the helicopter was muffled here, but still present, a deep vibration in the bones of the building. Emma set the duffel on the bench and unzipped it, fingers moving fast now, not careful. She shoved the last of her things inside. Her mind screamed one instruction over and over. "Leave." She grabbed the duffel, slung it over her shoulder, and moved toward the door that led to the back fire stairs. Her hand hit the push bar. She froze. Not from fear, from recognition. Boots in the hall. Heavy, deliberate, coming closer. Emma's chest tightened. She could not tell if the sound was memory or real until it stopped outside the locker room door. A hand hit the metal once, not a polite knock. A signal. Emma released the push bar slowly and turned. The locker room door opened. One of the operators stepped into the doorway, rein still clinging to his gear. His eyes scanned quickly, then locked on Emma. He raised a hand to his headset. "She's here," he said. Emma's mouth went dry. Behind him, the corridor filled with movement. Another operator took a position outside the door, guarding it like a perimeter. The third lingered further down the hall, watching for anyone approaching. Then Rourke appeared. He entered the locker room without hesitation, as if he had walked into places like this 1,000 times. He did not carry his rifle in his hands now. It hung across his chest, controlled. His eyes were fixed on Emma with a look that hit her like a physical force. He looked older than the last time she had seen him, older in a way that had nothing to do with years and everything to do with nights without sleep. Gray threaded through his beard. Dark circles sat under his eyes. His posture was still that of a man built for carrying weight. Emma's throat tightened. The room felt smaller. Rourke stopped a few feet from her, hands open at his sides, palms visible. A gesture meant to calm a nervous animal, or to show he was not here to hurt her. Emma's hands trembled around the duffel strap. "Emma Carter," he said quietly. Emma swallowed. "That's my name," she said. Rourke's eyes stayed on her face. "No," he said. "It is the name on your badge." Emma's jaw clenched. "You should not be here." Rourke took a slow breath, as if steadying himself. "I did not come here for conversation." Emma's eyes flicked to the door, to the operators outside, to the way they had closed the corridor without a word. Her pulse hammered. She forced her voice to stay level. "You need to leave," she said. "This is a hospital." Rourke's gaze did not move. "It is," he agreed. "That is why we landed here." Emma's fingers tightened until the strap bit into her skin. "I am not going," she said. Rourke's expression shifted, the hard edge softening for a fraction. "You already did," he said. "You walked into an ER and saved a man with no hesitation." Emma felt heat rise behind her eyes and pushed it down. "I did my job." Rourke's voice dropped lower. "You did the job you pretend you do not know how to do." Emma's breath came shallow. "Stop," she said. Rourke took one step closer, still not crowding her, but closer enough that she could see the fatigue in the lines of his face. He looked like he had been running on urgency for days. "I am not here to punish you," he said. "I am here because we need you." Emma shook her head once, sharp. "No." Rourke's eyes narrowed slightly. "You are going to listen." Emma's hands trembled harder. She tried to hide it by curling her fingers into the strap, but Rourke saw anyway. His gaze dropped briefly to her hands, then back to her face. "They told me you were shaking," he said softly. Emma's voice cracked and she hated it. "I am tired," she said. "That is all." Rourke's jaw tightened. "You are not tired," he said. "You are caged." Emma flinched at the word, a small involuntary movement, like a nerve touched. Rourke's eyes held on her unwavering. "You can keep pretending in here," he said, glancing at the lockers, the fluorescent light, the smell of bleach. "Or you can acknowledge what you are." Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. "I am a nurse," she said. Rourke's expression did not change. "You are a lot of things," he replied. In the corridor, voices rose. The faint, muffled sound of Klein, somewhere beyond angry and insistent. Whitaker's higher-pitched panic. The hospital pressing back against the intrusion. Emma's eyes flicked towards the noise, then back to Rourke. "They are going to call the police," she said. Rourke nodded once, as if that was a small detail. "They can," he said. Emma swallowed. "You brought guns into a hospital." Rourke's gaze stayed steady. "We brought security into a place that does not understand what is bleeding in our aircraft," he said. Emma's stomach tightened at the word aircraft. The helicopter's vibration still pulsed through the building. She forced her voice calm. "You have medevac. You have bases. You have trauma surgeons. You do not need me." Rourke's eyes hardened again. "We do." Emma shook her head. "No." Rourke exhaled slowly, then looked down for half a second as if choosing words. When he looked back up, the plea was gone. There was only urgency. "You have exactly one job right now," he said. "Stand still. Listen, then decide." Emma's fingers loosened slightly on the duffel strap. She hated that her body responded to his tone, to the command voice that reached into places she had tried to bury. Her voice came out rough. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Rourke held her gaze. His eyes looked like a man who had watched too many good people die. "Because I am out of options," he said. The locker room air felt thin. Emma's pulse thudded in her ears, matching the distant rhythm of rotors outside. Rourke's voice softened just enough to cut deeper. "Look at me," he said. Emma did not want to. She did anyway. For a beat, neither of them moved. The operators in the corridor stayed silent, holding the hallway like a perimeter. The hospital noise pressed in from afar. Rourke spoke again, and this time it sounded less like a command and more like a confession. "We did not come here for politics," he said. "We did not come here to scare civilians. We came here because someone on that aircraft is running out of time." Emma's breath caught. Her mind tried to reject the sentence, tried to turn it into something manageable. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Who?" Rourke stared at her for a long second, as if weighing the impact of a name. Then he stepped closer, close enough that his next words were only for her. "It's one of ours," he said. "And he asked for you." Rourke's words hung in the locker room air, heavy and close. Emma's fingers tightened on the duffel strap until her knuckles blanched. She had names in her head she refused to touch. Names that pulled heat and dust back into her mouth. "Say it," she forced out. Rourke did not blink. Dash Dawson. The name hit her hard enough to steal her breath. For a moment, she was somewhere else, hearing rotors through bone-feeling grit against skin-tasting copper. "No," she whispered, as if denial could change the math. "He is alive," Rourke said. "Barely." Emma's throat tightened. "You have medevac. You have base surgeons." "We have minutes," Rourke replied. "We brought him here for blood and ventilators. He asked for you." Emma snapped the rubber band on her wrist too hard. The sting did nothing. "Let the trauma team handle it," she said. "This building has surgeons." Rourke's voice lowered. "The round is not ordinary." Emma's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "A prototype," he said. "It malfunctioned. It is lodged where a wrong tool or a wrong movement can turn this room into a crater." The locker room felt smaller. Emma's mouth went dry. "You are telling me there is live hardware in his wound," she said. "I'm telling you it is unpredictable," Rourke replied. "I'm telling you the only person who has worked around this family of devices and kept the patient alive is you." Emma swallowed. "I have not held a scalpel in a year." Rourke's gaze stayed fixed on her. "Dash does not have a year." Silence settled thick and sharp. The helicopter outside thumped through the walls like a second heartbeat. Emma's shoulders rose and fell, once controlled. Then her voice changed, losing the soft camouflage she had worn for months. "Get him inside," she said. "Quiet, no yelling, low ready. You control the corridor and you do not touch staff unless they interfere." Rourke spoke into his headset. His men shifted outside the door with immediate purpose. Emma grabbed trauma shears from a shelf and tucked them into her waistband. She tightened her hair into a hard knot until her scalp pulled. When she stepped into the corridor beside Rourke, she moved like she had stopped asking permission to take up space. The ER was half frozen, half frantic. Nurses stared. Patients stared. The deep rotor noise pressed against the building, rattling paper on counters. Tara stood at the nurse station with a phone in her hand, face pale. Bethany hovered near triage, wide-eyed. Whitaker lingered behind the counter like a man watching his world tilt. Klein pushed forward, furious and loud. "This is insane," he shouted. "You cannot land an aircraft on hospital property and march armed men into my department." Emma walked straight at him without slowing. Klein's eyes locked on her. "You," he snapped. "I fired you." Emma stopped close enough that he had to look up, and that alone made him bristle. Her voice was calm, low, and cutting. "Move," she said. Klein scoffed. "I am the physician here." "Then act like one," Emma replied. "Stop talking. Start helping." Klein's face flushed. Security. Paul stood near the doors, pale hands half raised, not sure where authority lived anymore. Emma did not look at Paul. She kept her eyes on Klein. "A man outside will die while you argue," she said, clear, trauma. 1. Klein shook his head outraged. "You cannot order me." Emma's hand pressed against his chest and pushed, controlled and direct. He stumbled back into a chair, shock flashing across his face. The hallway went silent in the way rooms go silent when power breaks. Emma turned to Tara. "Blood bank," she said. "Emergency release. O negative and AB plasma. Run her to trauma 1. Tara's throat worked. She lifted the phone with shaking hands. "Blood bank," she said. "This is Charge Nurse Lopez. Emergency release to trauma 1, now." Whitaker stepped forward, voice thin. "This is a hospital you cannot commandeer." Rourke's presence turned Whitaker's words into something small. "You can keep your paperwork," Rourke said. "Or you can keep your patient." Whitaker swallowed and stepped aside. Emma moved down the corridor toward trauma 1. Rourke's men flowed with her clearing space without shouting, bodies, angled eyes, scanning rifles controlled. Inside trauma 1, the lights were harsh and clean. Equipment waited silent and ready. Emma took the room in with one sweep of her eyes. 2 nurses, she said. 1 meds, 1 blood and lines. Respiratory in the room. Radiology tech with MRI safe tools. Bethany stepped forward before fear could stop her. "Meds," she said. Tara hesitated, then followed. "Blood," she said. A respiratory therapist rushed in mask at her neck. "What do you need?" "Be ready," Emma said. No sudden movement around the neck. Emma stepped to the sink and turned the water on hot. It ran clear, then steamed. She scrubbed her hands the way she had been taught in nursing school, then the way she had been taught in places that did not use laminated posters. Soap under nails. Fingers interlaced. Wrists. Forearms. She watched the water carry pink traces down the drain and tried not to think about how many drains had swallowed the same color for her. Tara hovered near the doorway phone, still in her hand, watching Emma like she was watching a person shed a costume. Bethany stood by the medication cart, eyes fixed, breathing shallow. "Trauma 1 is yours," Tara said quietly, as if the sentence tasted strange. Emma did not look up. "It is everyone's," she replied. "If we do this right, nobody in this room has to live with regret." Bethany swallowed. "What do you need first?" Emma shut off the faucet and dried her hands with a towel that felt too thin. "Silence and space," she said. "Then blood, then control." Outside, the door's voices rose. Klein's tone carried down the corridor sharp with the confidence of a man used to being heard. "You cannot keep me out," he shouted. "That is my trauma bay." Rourke's voice answered lower, almost bored. "It is a room," he said. "Step away." The deadbolt clicked. A sound so small, yet it changed everything. Emma pulled gloves on, snapping them at the wrist. The rubber sounded loud in the tense air. She walked to the center of the bay and looked at the equipment, taking inventory the way some people took inventory of exits. The ventilator cart sat to one side. The ultrasound sat covered like a sleeping animal. The crash cart waited near the wall. The overhead lights were too bright and too honest. Emma turned to Bethany. "When he arrives, do not freeze," she said. "If your hands shake, give your hands a task." Bethany nodded hard, yes. Emma looked at Tara. "If anyone argues with you, do not argue back," she said. "Do your job. You will be enough." Tara's throat worked. "I am not used to being told that," she admitted. Emma's gaze softened by a fraction. "Get used to it," she said. The stretcher wheels hit the corridor fast, the sound sharp and urgent. The doors opened, and the operators came in with a litter between them, moving like a single organism. Their gloves were dark with someone else's blood. Rain clung to their sleeves. The air that followed them carried the bite of aviation fuel and wet asphalt. Dash Dawson lay strapped down pale, under bright light. His lashes wet his lips, tinged blue at the edges. The bandage around his neck looked like it had been dipped in red. His chest rose in shallow broken pulls, each breath a negotiation. For a second, Emma saw him the way she remembered him, grinning and loud chewing on sunflower seeds, while the rest of the world slept. That image vanished under the reality on the litter. "On my count," Emma said. Her voice did not rise, but everyone heard it. 3, 2, 1, transfer. They moved him onto the trauma bed with practiced coordination. The monitor leads went on. The blood pressure cuff rapped. The pulse ox struggled for a signal, then flickered weakly. Tara read the numbers and her face drained. "Pressure is low," she said. "Heart rate 140. Bethany's hands shook as she opened a kit. "I have meds drawn," she said, voice thin. Emma placed 2 fingers on Dash's wrist, feeling the pulse skitter under skin. "We are not chasing numbers," she said. "We are buying time." Dash's eyes fluttered open and found her. Focus returned for one fragile beat. He tried to speak. The sound came out as a rasp, barely formed. Told him no. Emma leaned closer. "Save it," she murmured. "Breathe if you can. Do not fight the mask." Dash's eyes held hers, then drifted. Rourke stood near the head of the bed, his face carved into something hard. His hands hovered, wanting to help, knowing his help was weight. Emma looked at him. "You hold the head when I tell you," she said. Rourke nodded once, immediate obedient in a way that would have shocked the hospital staff. Emma looked at Tara. "Blood," she said, "now." Tara hung the first unit hand steadier than her face. "Running," she said. Emma looked at Bethany. "Sedation on my count," she said. "We need him quiet. Quiet means alive." Bethany swallowed and nodded, eyes fixed on Emma like a lifeline. Emma lifted the edge of the bandage slowly, careful not to disturb anything more than necessary. Blood welled instantly warm and relentless. The wound sat near the line where the body's margins were thin. The respiratory therapist stepped closer. "Airway support is ready," she said. Emma nodded without looking up. "Stay ready," she replied. No sudden motion at the neck. Dash's chest hitched. A small cough threatened, then stopped. His eyelids squeezed, once pain flashing, then eased under medication. Emma's gaze tracked every movement, every breath, every tremor of muscle. Her own hands were still so still it looked unnatural, like her body had become a tool. The faint electronic whine threaded into the room almost too high to notice at first. It rode under the monitor beeps like a second soundtrack. Bethany's head lifted. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Rourke's jaw tightened. "That is the device he said." Emma closed her eyes for half a second. Not prayer. A memory of briefings and diagrams. Rules spoken in calm voices. Do not treat it like a bullet. Do not treat it like metal. Treat it like a decision. But yeah. She opened her eyes. "Radiology," she said. "I need MRI safe tools, now." Tara blinked. "MRI suite is down the hall. They keep those locked." Rourke turned his head and spoke into his headset. 2 operators vanished out the door without a word. Minutes dragged. The whine rose and fell as Emma kept pressure and kept Dash still working gauze where suction would usually go. Tara watched the pressure climb slowly with each unit of blood. Bethany watched the heart rate, the oxygen, the way the numbers fought. The doors opened, and the operators returned, flanking a young radiology tech whose face looked like he had been pulled out of a quiet room and dropped into a war. He carried a tray like it weighed 100 pounds. The tools on it looked wrong for surgery. Plastic clamps, titanium drivers, blunt pale forceps. A lead shield leaned against his hip, awkward and oversized. "I am Evan," he said, breathless. "This is everything labeled MRI safe. I do not know what you are doing." Emma's voice softened just enough to keep him from bolting. "You are doing fine," she said. "Put the shield there. Stay behind it once we start. If anyone tells you to leave, you ignore them." Evan stared at her, trying to process. Then he nodded, small and quick. Tara muttered under her breath, half fear and half awe. "Who are you?" Emma did not answer. She reached for the non-magnetic forceps and tested the weight in her hand, adjusting her grip until the tool stopped feeling like a stranger. She looked at Rourke. "Now," she said. Rourke stepped in close and placed his gloved hands at Dash's temples, anchoring him. His grip was gentle, precise, a soldier trying to be a cradle. Emma worked without rushing. She cleared blood in small, controlled motions, gauze folding and unfolding in her fingers. The room smelled of iron and alcohol blood and wet nylon. The overhead light made everything too bright, every detail sharp. Outside the doors, Klein's voice rose again, muffled by the deadbolt. "Open this door. You cannot lock a physician out of his own trauma bay." Rourke's operator at the entrance did not react. He stood like a wall, eyes forward, rifle angled down, the picture of restraint. Emma's forceps met something hard. The whine rose sharper, as if the hardware had noticed attention. Tara's breath caught. Bethany held still with the medication tray. Evan pressed closer behind the shield, his knuckles white. Emma's voice stayed calm. "Do not move," she said. Dash's heart rate climbed on the monitor. The beeps tightened into a faster rhythm. Bethany whispered, "He is reacting." Emma nodded once without looking up. "Keep him deep," she said. "Not too deep. I need him alive. I need him still." Bethany adjusted medication with careful hands, forcing her tremor into a task. Emma eased the forceps back a fraction. The whine softened slightly, then rose again when she angled in. She could feel the device through the tool, the cold, hard certainty of it. Her mind built a picture she could not see. Shape. Position. How it sat. What it might do if it decided it was being stolen. For an instant, memory flashed behind her eyes. A briefing room. A whiteboard. A quiet instructor saying it is not the wound that kills you, it is the panic. Emma swallowed and kept breathing. She found purchase. The whine climbed angry and thin like a warning, trying to become a scream. Tara's voice came out in a whisper, "Emma." Emma's tone did not change. "Hold," she said. Rourke's hands tightened minutely at Dash's temples, anchoring him. Sweat slid down his cheek. Dash's eyelids fluttered. A small cough threatened, then stopped under pressure and medication. The whine dipped, then rose again. Emma spoke evenly, "I'm taking it out." Tara whispered, "Now." Emma did not look up. "If I go slow, it reads tampering," she said. "If I go fast, I tear what is already failing." Rourke's voice was low. "Your call." Emma inhaled and exhaled, once controlled. "On 3, she said. The room stopped breathing. 1. The whine rose. 2. The monitor beeped faster. 3. Emma pulled. Not a jerk. A smooth, controlled extraction, strength and precision together. For a heartbeat, the whine screamed, then cut off like a switch thrown. Emma held a small, blood-slick cylinder in her forceps, stupidly small for the danger it carried. Her hand did not shake. Her face did not change. She lowered it into the saline basin and released it gently. Bubbles rose quick and nervous. Evan stared at it like it might leap out. "That is it," he whispered. "Yes," Emma said, and her voice snapped sharp. "Evan, take it, loading dock, empty space, throw it far." Evan's eyes widened. "Me. You are the fastest," Emma said, "and your hands are clean." Evan grabbed the basin with both hands. The saline sloshed over the rim, dripping onto the floor. He ran through the back door without looking back. In the hallway beyond, nurses flattened themselves against walls. A patient in a wheelchair stared mouth open. Evan's shoes squeaked on linoleum as he sprinted, arms locked to keep the basin level. He hit the stairwell door with his shoulder and pushed it open, taking the steps 2 at a time. The smell changed as he descended. less antiseptic, more industrial dust and old cardboard. At the bottom, a service corridor opened toward the loading dock. A dock worker stood frozen by a pallet, jack eyes wide. "Get back," Evan shouted, and his voice finally found volume. The worker stumbled away. Evan burst through the loading dock door into damp night air. Rain misted sideways under the dock lights. Beyond the dock, an empty lot spread out gravel and weeds bordered by a chain-link fence. Car alarms wailed faintly in the distance, triggered by the helicopter and the building shake. Evan ran to the edge of the lot, chest burning. His arms ached from holding the basin steady. He looked for the farthest clear space, a stretch of wet gravel with no cars, no people, nothing that mattered. He drew his arms back and threw. The basin arced through the air, saline spraying like a brief glittering fan under the lights. It hit the ground hard and skidded across gravel, coming to rest near the fence with a small metallic scrape. Evan did not wait. He turned and ran back toward the dock door, heart-hammering lungs, burning boots slipping on wet concrete. He was halfway back inside when the boom hit. It was not a sharp blast. It was a heavy punch of sound and pressure that rolled across the lot, a dull thud that shook the dock lights and rattled the metal door. A shockwave slapped his back. Evan stumbled, catching himself on the doorframe. For a second, everything went quiet, except the rain and the distant alarms. Then voices rose inside the hospital, muffled through walls, a ripple of panic and movement. Evan swallowed hard, hands shaking now that his task was done. He wiped rain and sweat from his forehead with the back of his wrist and forced himself back into motion. When Evan vanished through the back door, the trauma bay felt like it had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. The basin was gone, but the idea of it lingered. Everyone in the room kept their bodies still, as if movement could call the danger back. Emma did not allow herself to watch the door. She returned to Dash's neck, to the wet, relentless work that could not pause. The blood that had pooled was not dramatic now. Not a flood, but a steady insistence. The kind of bleeding that did not announce itself with splashes, just kept taking. "Tara," Emma said. "Pressure. 87. Tara replied, eyes locked on the monitor. "Keep it climbing," Emma said. "Slow, controlled." Tara adjusted the flow with hands that were finally steady. Fear had burned through her and left focus behind. Bethany hovered with the medication tray, swallowing hard. "Do you want more sedation?" she asked. Emma watched Dash's throat, the way his muscles twitched under medication, the way his jaw threatened to tense. "Not yet," she said. "Too much, and we lose him. Too little, and he moves." Bethany nodded, biting down on her own fear. Rourke's hands remained at Dash's temples, anchoring him. Sweat dampened his beard. He did not wipe it away. His eyes stayed on Emma's hands, tracking every motion as if his focus could add stability. The electronic whine was gone now, and the silence it left behind felt suspicious, like a predator that had stopped making noise because it was listening. Outside the bay, the hallway erupted with new chaos. A distant shout, fast footsteps, a door slamming, someone yelling about smoke in the lot. Klein's voice rose again, muffled by the deadbolt. "You set off an explosion. You are destroying this hospital." Emma kept working. She did not look up, but her voice carried across the room, calm and sharp. "Somewhere out there you are worried about parking spaces," she said. "In here, we are worried about arteries." Tara's mouth tightened, a half-smile that did not fully form. Emma's hands moved with economy, using pressure and clamps where they mattered, choosing restraint over speed, until the moment speed became necessary. She listened to Dash's breathing and to the monitor's rhythm, reading the body like a language. A sound crackled through Rourke's headset, faint, then clearer. Rourke's eyes flicked toward the door window. He spoke low, a single response, then went quiet again. Emma did not ask. She did not need to. She could feel the building shifting around them, civilians reacting to a military problem, administration scrambling for a story that would make sense. The respiratory therapist stood at the airway cart, hands poised, eyes darting between Dash's face and Emma's work. "He is trying to swallow," she whispered. Emma nodded once. Keep him supported, she said. Talk to him. Low voice. The therapist leaned closer to Dash. Voice calm. Steady, the tone you used on someone who was slipping. You are in the hospital, she murmured. You are safe. Breathe slow. Dash's eyelids fluttered. His throat worked, then eased again. Emma reached for steel only after her instinct said the biggest trigger was gone. The familiar weight settled into her grip like a remembered prayer. Her hands sped up, no longer tiptoeing around a possible detonation, now racing biology racing loss. For a moment, the hospital fell away. There was only the field of her hands and the fragile map under skin. The rest of the room became background noise, faces, and fear held at the edge of her vision. Tara spoke, voice tight, pressure 90. Good, Emma said. Hold it. Bethany's breathing was shallow, but she stayed. She handed what Emma asked for the instant Emma asked, no hesitation, no question moving, like she had been waiting her whole career for someone to give her clear direction. A faint smell drifted in from the corridor, something sharp and dirty, like burnt insulation carried on rain. The lot was close. The disposal was close. Emma kept her focus on Dash, but she felt her pulse quicken anyway. The body remembered even when the mind refused. Rourke's voice came low, not to the room, just to Emma. Evan is out, he said. Emma did not answer. She did not need reassurance. She needed the next 5 minutes to stay quiet. They did. Then the world answered with impact. Back in Trauma 1. The boom rolled through the walls like thunder trapped indoors. Cabinets rattled. A metal instrument clinked against a tray. For a heartbeat, everyone in the bay froze, eyes wide, listening for a second blast that did not come. Emma did not move. She shifted immediately back to biology, to bleeding and pressure and the fragile math of a human body. More blood, she said. And Tara moved without thinking. Hand steady now because fear had burned itself out. Bethany watched the monitor, voice tight. Pressure is climbing. Keep it there, Emma replied. We do not chase perfection. We chase alive. She switched to familiar tools and her hands found their old speed tying and sealing with economical motion. The tremor that haunted her in quiet moments had nowhere to live when every second had a job. Outside the door, Klein's pounding stopped. Footsteps ran past the bay. Someone shouted about smoke outside. The hospital's panic had shifted away from this room and toward whatever had happened in the lot. Emma finished the last motions and pressed a fresh dressing into place. She held pressure and watched Dash's color return at the edges, slow as sunrise. Tara's voice cracked with disbelief. 95 systolic. Emma nodded once. Better. Dash's eyelids fluttered. A deeper breath pushed into his chest, assisted but real. The monitor beeped steadier now, less frantic, more certain. The adrenaline drained, and Emma's knees threatened to give. Rourke caught her by the elbow, steadying her without making it a show. Stay up, he murmured. Emma exhaled. He is alive, she said. Rourke looked at Dash, then back to her. Because you are, he replied. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened to a corridor packed with bodies and disbelief. Whitaker stood there with 2 police officers. Their faces were careful hands hovering near belts, eyes flicking between armed operators, and the blood on Emma's scrubs. Behind them, staff crowded shoulder to shoulder, phones, half-raised curiosity mixed with fear. Klein stood near the front like a man trying to reclaim a stage. His face was red. His white coat rumpled, his voice loud enough to reach the far end of the hall. "Arrest her," he shouted, pointing at Emma. She practiced without credentialing. She assaulted me. There was an explosion. She endangered this hospital. One officer lifted a cautious hand. "Ma'am," he said, "we need to understand what happened." Rourke stepped forward half a pace, and the officer's posture stiffened. "She is not speaking to you," Rourke said, calm and final. Whitaker's voice cracked. "Commander, you cannot hold our hospital hostage." Rourke's gaze slid to him. "Nobody is holding you hostage," he said. "Step back." Klein shoved forward again, anger overriding sense. "This is my department," he insisted. A deeper, rougher voice cut through the hall like gravel dragged over steel. "Your department almost killed me." The crowd parted as Dash Dawson appeared behind Emma, supported by Bethany and the respiratory therapist. He looked pale and bandaged, but awake eyes sharp despite pain. Emma's head snapped toward him. "Dash," she said, hard. "Back to bed." Dash's mouth twitched. Had to see the man yelling. He fixed his gaze on Klein. "You want her in cuffs," he rasped. "For keeping me alive." Klein's mouth opened. No sound came out. Dash swallowed, wincing. "You people have no idea who you are talking to," he said, and his voice carried despite the rasp. "You watched her stand in that room with something in my neck that could have killed everyone within these walls." She did not blink. Whitaker tried to regain control. "Sir, we are trying to keep people safe." "Then you should have kept her safe," Dash replied, and the words landed on Whitaker like a slap. Klein found his voice again thin. "She is a nurse," he said, as if repeating it could shrink her back down. Dash's eyes narrowed. "Commander Aaron Shaw," he said. "Call sign Wraith." The name dropped into the corridor like a weight. Heads turned, brows furrowed. Someone whispered it under their breath as if the syllables themselves were classified. Emma's shoulders went rigid. The tremor threatened her fingers again, and she curled them, hiding it. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, older in a dark suit under a white coat. Dr. Renee Halpern, Chief of Medicine. Her eyes fixed on Emma, and recognition bloomed. "Shaw Halpern," said quietly. Emma met her gaze. "Yes," she replied. Halpern's gaze flicked from Emma's face to the blood on her sleeves, then to the operators at the door. She did not flinch. She stepped forward with the authority of someone who had cut through chaos long before Klein ever learned to pronounce triage. "Lopez," she said, voice sharp. Tara straightened as if summoned. "Yes, doctor." "Give me the plain version," Halpern said. "No drama." Tara swallowed. Her eyes met Emma's for a beat, then she faced Halpern. "The patient came in from a military aircraft," she said. "There was unstable hardware involved. Emma managed the intervention. The patient is alive." Halpern's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you," she said to Tara, "stood your ground." Tara's jaw tightened. "I did my job." Halpern nodded once, as if logging the fact. Klein tried to step back into the center. "Chief," he said, voice strained, "this is a breach of hospital policy. We have civilians. We have liability." Halpern's gaze snapped to him. "You will stop speaking over the people who are actually in the room," she said. "If you want to file a complaint, you do it after the patient is stable, and after you have taken a breath." Klein's face reddened. "You cannot silence me." Halpern did not raise her voice. "Watch me," she said. One of the police officers cleared his throat again, cautious. "Dr. Halpern," he said, "we need to ensure staff safety." Halpern turned to him. "Staff safety is being handled," she replied, nodding toward the operators without acknowledging their weapons directly. "Your job right now is crowd control. Clear this hallway. Let the clinical team work." The officer hesitated, then nodded, reading Halpern's certainty and the room's reality. He gestured to his partner and began moving people back. Halpern's attention shifted to Klein, and the look she gave him stripped confidence from his posture. "You tried to remove the only person in this building who understood what was inside that wound," she said. Klein bristled. "I am the doctor." Rourke's voice rumbled. "Not tonight," he said. Halpern glanced at the police officers. "This is a medical emergency involving federal personnel," she said, her tone measured. "You will stand down and allow care to continue." The officers hesitated, reading the room. Their eyes flicked to the operators, to Dash's bandaged neck, to Emma's steady face, to Halpern's authority. They stepped back a fraction, hands lowering. Klein looked around as if searching for someone to validate him. Nobody did. Emma's gaze moved from face to face, absorbing the shift, feeling the walls tighten around her in a different way. She had tried so hard to be invisible. Now, she was the center of the corridor and visibility felt like exposure. She lowered her voice, controlled. "He needs rest," she said. "Clear the hall." Tara moved first, raising her hands to herd staff back with quiet urgency. Bethany guided Dash back inside with careful hands. Emma followed, and as soon as the trauma bay doors closed, the tremor returned to her fingers, small and relentless. She stared at her hands for half a second, then forced them still by giving them work. She adjusted the edge of Dash's dressing with a gentleness that did not match the violence of the last hour. Rourke stood beside her quiet, now eyes on Dash, then on her. "You came back," he said. Emma's voice was barely audible. He asked, she replied. The trauma bay had gone quiet, in the way a room went quiet after surviving something it could not explain. Dash lay back against clean sheets, his breathing steadier now, his eyes half closed. The dressing at his neck held. The monitor beeped with a rhythm that no longer sounded like a countdown. Emma kept her fingers on his pulse for another long moment, not because she doubted the numbers, but because her body needed a human confirmation. Under her fingertips, life moved. Fragile, stubborn, real. Rourke stood close, watching her hands like he was guarding them. Dash's mouth twitched a ghost of his old grin. His voice came out rough. "You still bark orders like you own the room." Emma leaned in, her tone low. "I do not own anything," she said. "You do. This body is yours. You do not get to throw it away." Dash's eyelids fluttered. "Tell that to the guys upstairs." Emma's gaze sharpened. "Do not talk," she said. "Rest." Dash's eyes drifted, then closed. A tension in his brow eased. Bethany exhaled as if she had been holding her breath since the first stretcher wheel hit the hall. She leaned against the medication cart, hands still trembling, and then forced them still by recapping a syringe with careful precision. Tara stood near the foot of the bed, arms folded tight across her chest, staring at Emma like she was trying to solve a puzzle that had turned into a person. Her face was pale, but her posture had changed. Less swagger, more presence. She looked like someone who had seen the edge and decided she did not want to be soft anymore. The door opened, and Dr. Renee Halpern stepped in with Whitaker close behind her. The administrator's suit looked out of place against the blood on the floor and the sterile light. His eyes darted to the operators near the doorway, then to Dash, then to Emma. He kept swallowing like his throat was too dry for the moment. Halpern's gaze settled on Dash first. She did not flinch at the bandage or the smell. She walked to the bedside like she belonged there. "Mr. Dawson," she said. Dash cracked one eye open. "Doc." Halpern nodded once. "You are stable," she said. "Stay that way." Dash's mouth twitched again. Trying. Halpern turned her gaze to Emma. It was a long look, careful and direct. "Commander Shaw," she said, and the title landed in the room with quiet authority. Emma's shoulders stiffened. "Dr. Halpern," she replied. Halpern's expression softened just a fraction, not warmth, recognition. "You brought him back," she said. Emma did not accept praise. She adjusted the edge of the dressing and checked the monitor again. "He is still here," she said. "That is enough." Whitaker stepped forward, hands raised, slightly trying to reclaim control with gestures. "This has become a severe incident," he began. "We have property damage in the lot. We have civilian exposure. We have weapons in our facility." Rourke's eyes slid to him like a blade. Halpern lifted a hand without looking away from Emma. "Not now," she said. Whitaker tried again. "Chief, we have police involved. We have liability." Halpern's gaze snapped to Whitaker. "We have a patient in a bed and blood on the floor," she said. "If you want to talk about liability, start with the fact that we nearly lost a man because someone wanted to move him into a hallway to clear space." Whitaker's face tightened. He glanced toward the door, toward where Klein's voice had been earlier. "Dr. Klein made clinical decisions under pressure," he said. Halpern's stare did not soften. "So did Nurse Lopez," she replied. "So did Nurse Carter, and she saved a life." Emma's jaw tightened at the use of Carter, as if Halpern had chosen it on purpose, a reminder of the mask Emma had worn. Tara shifted throat working. Chief Tara said we need to clear the hall. Staff are filming. Patients are panicking. Halpern nodded. Do it, she said. Tara turned and moved, voice firm now. Everybody out, she called into the corridor. Back to your stations. Back to your beds. If you are not assigned to this room, you do not stand here. The hallway noise dulled as people retreated under the pressure of a command voice they recognized and respected. Halpern looked at Bethany. You stayed, she said. Bethany flushed eyes wide. Yes, doctor. Halpern nodded once. Good, she said. Remember what it felt like to stay. Bethany swallowed, then nodded hard. Halpern's gaze returned to Emma. We need a secure briefing, she said quietly. Not here. Not with an audience. Emma's eyes flicked to Dash, then to Rourke. He does not move, she said. Rourke nodded. My men will stay, he said. Whitaker opened his mouth again, then thought better of it. Halpern led them to a small staff office near the trauma bays. A cramped room with a desk, a plastic chair, and a coffee cup stained on the inside. The door closed, and the noise of the ER became muffled like the world had moved underwater. Halpern did not sit. She stood with her arms crossed and looked at Emma like she was building a picture out of fragments. I read about Wraith, Halpern said. Emma's eyes lowered. That is not my name, she replied. It is the name tied to a set of protocols, Halpern said. Protocols that kept people alive in places none of us want to imagine. Emma did not answer. Whitaker paced once, then stopped, hands hovering near his belt like he did not know what to do with them. Commander, he said, voice uneasy. You were hired here under a civilian identity. Emma looked at him. Her gaze was calm, but it made him shrink. I did not lie about my license, she said. I did not lie about my credentials. Whitaker swallowed. No, he admitted, but the file was redacted. We were not told. Halpern's eyes narrowed slightly. Who recommended her, she asked, looking at Whitaker. Whitaker hesitated. A federal liaison, he said. A letter. No return address. The phone number did not connect when we tried to call. It was phrased as a request, but it did not feel like one. Emma's mouth tightened. It was meant to give me a place to disappear, she said. Rourke's voice came from the doorway. He had entered without knocking, not rude, simply urgent. You cannot disappear from us, he said. Emma looked at him. I did, she replied. For a year, and it nearly killed you. Rourke said the words blunt enough to hurt. Halpern watched the exchange, eyes sharp. She understood conflict when she saw it. We are going to handle this cleanly, Halpern said to Whitaker. You're going to keep your staff from gossiping. You're going to keep media out of this wing. You're going to document the clinical facts and leave the rest alone. Whitaker's face tightened. Chief, the police are outside. Halpern nodded. I will speak to them, she said. You will not. Whitaker bristled, then swallowed it. Fine, he said. Halpern looked at Emma. As for you, she said, you are not under arrest. You are not a criminal. You are a clinician who acted to save a life under immediate threat. Emma's throat tightened. She had expected anger. She had expected punishment. She had expected to be forced back into the small shape she wore at HarborPoint. Instead, Halpern's voice carried a steadiness that felt unfamiliar. However, Halpern continued, you do not work here under these circumstances, not anymore. Emma's shoulders tensed. I understand, she said. Halpern held her gaze. You were fired by a resident, she said. That does not stand. Emma blinked. What? Halpern's mouth stayed firm. Dr. Klein does not have the authority to fire you, she said. Whitaker can place you on administrative leave, but you were not terminated by proper process. Whitaker shifted uncomfortable. Chief, we need to be careful, he said. Halpern's eyes cut to him. Careful would have been listening when she said the patient was unstable, she replied. Careful would have been humility. Rourke's gaze stayed on Emma. She is leaving anyway, he said. Emma did not answer. Her mind was too loud. The office door opened again, and one of Rourke's operators stepped in, headset on, eyes focused. He spoke quietly to Rourke, then turned slightly so Emma could hear. "Secure line," he said. "Admiral is up." Rourke reached into a pouch and pulled a small secure phone that did not look like anything sold in a store. He handed it to Emma without ceremony. Emma stared at it for a beat, then took it. The device felt heavier than its size. She lifted it to her ear. "This is Shaw," she said. For a second, there was only static and distant voices. Then a calm, older voice came through, edged with authority that did not need volume. "Commander Shaw," the Admiral said. "Report." Emma's spine straightened without her permission. "Patient stabilized," she replied. "Device removed and disposed of away from civilians. No casualties." A pause. Then the Admiral's voice softened slightly. "Good," he said. "You saved one of ours." Emma swallowed. "He is not out of danger," she said. "But he has a chance." "You gave him that," the Admiral replied. "You have been hard to locate." Emma's fingers tightened on the phone. That was the point, she said. Another pause longer. When the Admiral spoke again, the sharpness returned. "We need you back," he said. "Your skill set is not replaceable." Emma stared at the office wall, at a poster about hand hygiene, at the worn carpet, at the fluorescent light that made everything look tired. "I am not returning to the team," she said. Rourke's jaw tightened. He did not interrupt. Halpern watched Emma with a stillness that felt like respect. The Admiral's voice did not rise. "You just operated under civilian conditions," he said. "You still have it. The pipeline is deploying. I want you on the next rotation." Emma's chest tightened, an old pressure behind the ribs like she was back under weight. "I will not deploy," she said again, firmer. A beat of silence, then the Admiral spoke slower now. "You do not get to quit being what you are," he said. Emma's voice stayed level. "I am not quitting," she replied. "I am choosing where I bleed." Rourke's eyes flicked to her, surprised at the sentence. The Admiral's breath came through the line steady. "Then choose," he said. Emma closed her eyes for a second and saw the ER bay the staff faces the way Klein had tried to move a dying man because he wanted a bed. She saw Bethany's shaking hands and Tara's fear and Halpern's calm. She saw Dash's eyes finding hers through pain, the request underneath the words. When she opened her eyes, her voice was clear. "Your training is behind," she said. "Your candidates are learning from outdated material. They memorize steps, but they do not understand what modern wounds do, what devices do, what panic does. You want fewer funerals. You need better teaching." The Admiral did not interrupt. Emma continued. "I will not deploy," she said, "but I will train the next wave. Full authority over curriculum. Stateside billet. I want access to data after action medical reports, current threat profiles, and I want the ability to cut candidates who cannot keep their heads." Rourke's mouth twitched slightly. He could almost see the recruit suffering already. The Admiral's answer came fast. "Done," he said. "Report to Joint Expeditionary Base Little Creek on Monday. You will run the course." Emma's throat tightened. She had expected resistance. She had expected bargaining. The speed of agreement hit her like a door opening too easily. "Understood," she said. The Admiral's voice softened again, just enough to feel personal. "You did not vanish," he said. "You were healing. Sometimes that takes distance." Emma did not trust herself to reply to that. The Admiral spoke one last sentence, quiet but firm. "Welcome back, Commander." The line went dead. Emma lowered the phone slowly and handed it to Rourke. Her hands trembled now, small and relentless. Not fear of the room. Fear of being seen again. Rourke took the phone and tucked it away. "Little Creek," he said. Emma nodded once. Halpern studied her. "You have a plan," she said. Emma's voice came out low. "I have a direction," she replied. Whitaker cleared his throat. "We need to address the explosion," he said. Rourke's gaze snapped to him. Whitaker went pale. It was contained. Whitaker added quickly, "But the lot is damaged. Vehicles." Rourke's tone was flat. "File your claim," he said. "You will be paid." Whitaker hesitated. "Paid by who?" Rourke's stare held on him. "By people you do not bill," he said. Whitaker swallowed. "Fine," he whispered. Halpern stepped closer to Emma, her voice lowered. "Before you leave, she said I want you to speak to Dr. Klein." Emma's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because he will try to turn this into a story where he is the victim," Halpern said. "He needs to hear reality from someone he cannot dismiss." Emma stared at Halpern for a beat, then nodded once. The corridor outside had thinned. Police officers stood near the nurse station, no longer reaching for cuffs, just watching. The staff looked shaken and curious. Some avoided Emma's eyes. Others stared openly, now awe mixed with discomfort. Klein stood near the wall, white coat wrinkled, face-tight eyes darting. He looked smaller without his voice filling the space. Emma walked toward him with calm steps. Tara hovered nearby, arms folded, watching. Klein lifted his chin like it was armor. "You cannot intimidate me with your friends," he said, voice strained. Emma stopped in front of him. She did not crowd him. She did not raise her voice. She looked at him the way she looked at a monitor reading what mattered. "You have good hands," she said. Klein blinked, thrown off. "What?" "You can place a tube," Emma said. "You can cut and sew. Mechanics. That will carry you through residency." Klein swallowed. His eyes flicked to the operators down the hall, then back. Then, what he snapped. Emma's tone stayed even. "Then you will hurt people," she said. Klein's face tightened. "That is absurd." Emma leaned in just slightly enough that he had to focus on her and not the room. "You almost moved a man into a hallway because you wanted a bed," she said. "You ignored signs you did not know how to read because you did not want a nurse to be right." Klein's jaw worked. "I was under pressure." "So was he," Emma replied, nodding toward the ER bays. "So was I." Klein's eyes flashed. "You assaulted me." Emma's gaze did not change. "I stopped your hand," she said. "If you want to call that assault, write it down. I will sign my name to it." Klein's mouth opened, then closed. Emma's voice lowered further. "Every time you walk into a trauma bay and you feel the urge to shout to prove you belong," she said, "remember that the room does not care about your title. It cares about decisions." Klein stared at her, breathing shallow, as if the words were landing somewhere painful. Emma stepped back. "If you cannot do humility, do silence," she said. "Silence will keep your patient alive longer than your ego." Klein's shoulders sagged just a fraction. Emma turned away. She did not wait for an apology. She did not need one. Tara moved closer as Emma passed. "I stayed," Tara said quietly, almost defensive. Emma stopped and looked at her. Up close, Tara's eyes were wet with something she would never admit. "You did," Emma said. Tara swallowed. I did not know she whispered. Emma's gaze softened by a fraction. "Most people do not," she said. "You still stayed." Tara's voice broke slightly. "You are leaving." Emma nodded once. "Yes." Tara looked down, then back up. "Then go," she said, "but do not forget this place." Emma did not answer. She reached out and touched Tara's forearm briefly, a small gesture that carried more than words. Then she moved on. Bethany stood by the nurse station, hands clasped tight, eyes wide. When Emma approached, Bethany straightened. "I did not freeze," Bethany said quickly, as if she needed Emma to know. Emma looked at her and saw the tremor in Bethany's fingers, the fight underneath it. "No," Emma said, "you did not." Bethany swallowed. "You said to give my hands a task." "I did." Emma nodded once. "Keep doing that," she said. Bethany's eyes filled. "Are you coming back?" Emma shook her head. "Not here," she said. Bethany took a breath. "Thank you," she whispered. Emma held her gaze for a beat. "You earned your place tonight," she said. "Do not let anyone take it from you." Bethany nodded, biting down on emotion. Rourke and his men moved toward the employee exit with controlled purpose. The helicopter still sat in the lot, rotors idling, rain swirling in its wash. Emma walked with them, duffel on her shoulder, blood-dried, dark on her sleeves. The hospital doors opened, and night air hit her face, cool and wet, smelling of river and fuel. The lot was lit by harsh security lights. Smoke drifted faintly from the far edge near the chain-link fence, a dark smear against rain. Dash was wheeled out on a gurney, guarded wrapped in blankets. His eyes opened briefly as Emma stepped closer. "Still bossy," he rasped. Emma leaned in. "Still stubborn," she replied. Dash's mouth twitched. "You coming with us?" Emma's gaze held on him. "I'm coming to make sure nobody else has to," she said. Dash blinked, then nodded slowly as if he understood. Rourke watched Emma with a look that carried too much history for a hallway. "You sure?" he asked quietly. Emma stared at the helicopter. The matte black skin drank the light. The rotors beat the air like a warning. "I am sure," she said. Rourke nodded once. He did not argue. For him, that was a gift. Emma climbed into the cabin. The interior smelled of oil and wet gear. Dash lay strapped down, monitored alive. Operators moved with quiet efficiency, securing straps, checking equipment, speaking in short phrases into headsets. Emma sat beside Dash and rested her forearms on her knees. Her hands trembled now that they had no task. She curled her fingers and pressed them together until the tremor softened. Rourke climbed in last. He met her eyes for a beat, then looked away, giving her the privacy of not being watched. The helicopter lifted. The world dropped away. Through the window, HarborPoint shrank into a block of light surrounded by wet darkness. The parking lot lights glared. A few people stood near the doors watching small silhouettes under rain. Emma spotted Tara among them, arms folded tight, head tilted up, still watching. Emma reached into her duffel and pulled out her dog tags. The metal was cold against her palm. For months, she had kept them hidden like a wound. Now she ran her thumb across the engraved letters, then lifted them and let them settle around her neck. The chain felt heavy, familiar. Not comfortable, not cruel, just true. The helicopter banked over Norfolk River lights streaking below shipyard cranes, standing like dark skeletons against the horizon. Emma closed her eyes for a moment and let the vibration fill her bones without fighting it. On Monday morning, the air at Joint Expeditionary Base Little Creek was crisp and sharp, carrying the smell of salt and diesel and wet grass. The training building sat squat and plain, the kind of structure built to be used, not admired. Inside a lecture hall waited rows of chairs bolted to the floor, a screen at the front lights too bright. 50 candidates sat in rigid silence. Navy corpsmen, medics, rescue techs, all of them young enough to still believe toughness was louder than fear. Their uniforms were damp from morning drills. Mud clung to boots. Hands rested on knees, some steady, some not. The door opened. Emma stepped in wearing working fatigues rank on her collar, hair pulled tight dog tags hidden under fabric. She carried a single folder and a small laser pointer. She walked to the front without rushing and stopped at the podium. The room did not breathe. Emma looked across the candidate's eyes, sharp expression neutral. She took in posture, fidgeting confidence the tiny tells people could not hide when they thought nobody important was watching. She let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Then she spoke, voice calm and carrying. "My name is Commander Shaw," she said. "Some of you think you are here to learn equipment. That is easy. Equipment does not think. You do." She clicked the pointer. The screen lit with a grainy clip of chaos dust and motion, and shouting the kind of footage that made civilians look away. Nobody in the room looked away. "You are here because your hands will shake," Emma said. "Not because you are weak, because your body will try to survive. You will learn to work anyway." A young candidate in the second row stared at his own fingers as if hoping they would behave. They trembled slightly. Emma stepped down from the podium and walked the aisle between rows, slow, deliberate eyes scanning. She stopped in front of him. He swallowed hard. "Ma'am," he began. Emma looked at his hands, then met his eyes. "Give them a task," she said quietly. His jaw tightened. He forced his fingers still by curling them into a fist on his knee. Emma nodded once and moved on. At the front again, she faced the room. Her voice stayed calm, no theatrics, no shouting. "You will not panic," she said. "Not because you are fearless. Because fear is useless when someone is bleeding out and you are the only thing between them and a flag folded in silence." No one moved. No one blinked. Emma lifted the pointer again. "Lights down," she said. The room darkened. The video continued and Emma's voice cut through it like a scalpel through cloth, clean and precise. Outside, beyond the walls, the base kept moving. Somewhere, rotors turned. Somewhere, a ship horn sounded low across the water. Inside, Emma did not look toward any of it. She looked at the candidates, at their faces, at their hands, and she began.